Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of The View from the Top. My name is Brian Friedman from Benevo, and we've got a fabulous show for you today. So as ever, please do join the conversation, write in the comments box. The only way we know that you are actually out there is if you let us know. So please just say hi, say where you're from. You'll meet loads of old friends who are also on the show. It's a very friendly environment if this is your first one, but I know many of you are regulars, and many thanks to our regulars. We've got an amazing show for you today. We've got some great guests, and we've got some wonderful insights and some really important immigration updates as well. But as ever, before we get started, let me just tell you a little bit about what we've got planned for you next week. And today's show is great, and we're going to be talking about managing a mega program. Next week's show is going to be also really great, and we're going really off-piste next week. So I'm delighted to tell you that our theme for next week is, and get this, The View from Top Talks Dirty. We're going to spend 60 minutes of talking dirty. And my guests on next week's show are the two Bens, Ben Heller from Price Point and Ben Cross from Love Plus Relo. And we're going to be talking, when I say talk dirty, we're going to be exposing some of the rip-offs, some of the scams, some of the sharp practices in our industry with two really interesting guys from the moving world. And we're going to be talking about the sort of practices that go on and maybe ways that we can alert ourselves to what, if you like, is the underbelly of global mobility that maybe we don't like to talk about too much. But we're really going to get into that next week. So I said next week is The View Gets Dirty, scams, fast practices, and bad practices. But we've also got some interesting Benevo information for you, and I always like to share a little bit of Benevo information before we get cracking on the program proper. And the first is that, as indeed we did last week, straight after today's show, we're going to have a demo. So if anybody's interested in joining a demo and finding out about the Benevo platform, then it's not on this. You just need to go onto the Benevo website, log on benevo.com, and there will be a demo that you can see straight after today's show. And then also, we launched a 2-weekly series that runs every other Thursday, and that's starting again tomorrow. And we're going to be doing a session on, it's called Benevo Bites, and it's our technology update. And that's probably the world's first live cast aimed specifically at global mobility technology. And what we're going to talk about tomorrow is partner platforms. One of the things that we feel quite strongly about is our mission is to make every employee welcome, but actually we want to make every employee's partner and every employee's spouse feel welcome too. And we think that is actually something that is pretty critical. And to look at that, we actually did a little bit of research. And let me bring in Michelle. Hey there, Michelle.
Hey, Brian.
How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. Another great show today.
Cool. So tell me a bit about the research you've done into partner support.
Yeah. So we wanted to know from folks how important the family/spousal support programs are to an assignment's success. And overwhelmingly, the respondents thought it was absolutely critical to the success of an assignment, to the tune of 84% of respondents thought it was absolutely critical to provide partner/family support in order for an assignment to be successful. 15% thought it was a nice add-on, but wasn't essential. And just 1% of the respondents thought it wasn't important at all.
Wow, thank you for that information. That's really helpful. And let me just stress, actually, for people out there, that the aim of the platform that we're putting together is a free platform for anybody that's a Benevo client, for partners and spouses. And we're going to host a level of digital content, but also we're reaching out to providers in the industry, spousal partner support providers, who also want to share information, provide information, or indeed something where companies can access those sorts of real world spousal solutions, partner solutions, through the platform that we're creating. Anyway, enough about that. What I'd like to do now is to bring on our guests. I'm delighted to say that our guests today are a Lynne Mecca and a Narendra Parthasarathy. And let me bring them on. So let me just bring on our two new guests. Narendra, hi, and Lynne. Hi both. How are you doing?
Doing very good here.
Cool. Where are you both today?
I'm based out of Hoofddorp. It's a small place near Amsterdam in Netherlands.
And Lynne, where are you?
Hi, Brian. Hi, everybody, all industry friends out there. I'm in Rotterdam, the Netherlands.
Okay. And so we've got a real sort of Dutch connection going on. And we've already got 160 people online listening to us, and just some shout outs. We've got Jacqueline Van Haften. Hi, Jacqueline, also from the Netherlands, I think. Darren Short from Indiana. We've got Melissa Muhan. We've got Alistair Taylor. And he says, hi, Brian, looking forward to the show. When I joined as a grad in 2000, my desk was 2 along from you in a corner of the Old Bailey office. Those were the days. Good to see you here. We've got people from Boston, from New Jersey, from Newland Chase in the Netherlands, from Zurich, from Rhode Island, from Brazil, from Minnesota, from Amsterdam, from San Diego, Chicago, India, Boston. We've got Mexico. We've got people from all over the world joining in. So this is just fabulous that we've got so many. In fact, we're up to 175 now online. So that's absolutely brilliant. But of course, there's one other person that we do need to say hi to, which is Julia Onslow-Cole. Before we do that, actually, I'm just going to speak for a few moments to Lynne and Narendra. I just want to get a feel for your organisations. I think if I start with you, Lynne, I think probably everybody's heard of Unilever. I mean, as I've got it, you've got over 400 brands worldwide. Is that? And about, looking at my data, I've done my research, about 155,000 employees. And
yeah, I don't know the exact number, but for sure we're in that range.
Yeah, and you've been around. You've been around forever as a company, haven't you? I mean, you go well back into, is it the sort of the 19th century that your parent companies started? I know the merger was in the 1920s of the Anglo-Dutch merger, but the underlying companies go back forever. I mean, you're part of our history, I think.
Yeah. A lot of people talk about Lord Lever and how things were back then, and the care for our employees that continues to today.
Yeah, I think many people love your product. So it's great to have you as a representative of Unilever on the show. It's just great to have you here. And how many people would you sort of move each year? Well,
2020 is a bit of a bust, but 2019 we had about 1,500 moves globally, and about 45% of them were in my region in Europe.
Okay, so that's a mega program by anybody's standards. Now, Narendra, your company, of course, is in some ways the polar opposite of Unilever. I mean, you're a relatively new company founded in the mid-1990s, and there may be fewer people have heard of you and your products than they have of Unilever, but you're actually in terms of employees, you're a much larger company, aren't you? You've got, as I believe, 290,000 employees or something like that.
Yeah, worldwide we have about 290,000 employees in about 50 countries. So wow. We started off in 1994, and here we are. In about 5 years, we've grown quite significantly.
It's just extraordinary how a company can grow to be, nearly 300,000 employees in such a short period of time. Just extraordinary. And in many ways, I suspect your programs are going to be very, very different. You've got very different types, but in many ways, I suspect they're going to be very similar. I'm going to get into all that later, but we're going to do that in a bit. First of all, we're going to bring on, as ever, Julia Onslow-Cole, and she's going to talk to us about immigration. So let me just see if I can get Julia on screen.
Hi, Brian.
How are you doing? How's your week been?
Very well, thank you. Yes, good.
Cool. Okay, so what countries do you want to talk to us about today, Julia?
I'm just going to say a little bit about China, Singapore and Malaysia, and then just a few minutes about the UK.
Okay, well, let me just, I'll move the others just backstage for a moment. And Julia, why don't you kick off then and tell us what's going on around the world?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So just starting with China, and nothing much has changed from last week in that we're seeing increasing numbers of people using re-entry visas and new visas, but no further new countries. And really important, and I emphasized this last week, going to emphasize it again, that when you're making these applications, you should really stress the economic benefits. That seems to be the real secret in success for these applications. And the other thing I wanted to point out to everyone is that at the moment in China, the American Chamber of Commerce and the European Chamber of Commerce, they're sending out surveys to all the companies, asking them to comment on the immigration system and saying, you know, are there things that we can do to simplify the processes? And we know that these replies are really, really important. So please stress to your organizations that you should fill them in, because I think it will pay off and give benefits to everyone. So moving to Singapore, the election is over and the government's in power still, and the opposition party got a slight increase in the percentage of their vote. But the really important thing from an immigration perspective is an announcement that was made on Monday that on the 10th of August, there will be a live green lane between Singapore and Malaysia. And this is really, really important regional news, because that border between Singapore and Malaysia is actually the busiest crossing in the world. There's ordinarily 300,000 people cross that border. So to be putting something there, and the announcement doesn't have many details, but it says they're specifically looking at catering for all types of crossing, including commuters. So that's really, that's really, really good news. So I just wanted to now say a few things about the UK, because over the last few weeks, we sometimes say a little bit about the UK, but we don't often say much. And on Monday, there was a really important announcement. It was a 130-page document, and I want to give a big shout out to my colleague Gemma Hislop, who read every single word of this. And the document was entitled "The UK Points-Based System: Further Details." And in some ways, we were a bit disappointed, because there's not many new details. The only really new thing and new revelation in this document is about the health and care visa, which is very important, but unfortunately is set at quite a high bar. But the really important thing is that everybody's vendors, immigration vendors, will have been talking about the new system, and they will have been explaining what they believe will happen, but no one could be really sure until Monday. So the good thing from an organization perspective is that we do have now real certainty, because it was as widely anticipated. So that's a positive thing. And overall, as everyone knows, from the 1st of January, there's no preference for EU citizens, no freedom of movement. And it means that, it's really important everyone carries on ensuring that EU workers have applied under the EU settlement scheme. But the real thing, and we have mentioned this a few weeks ago, but I'm going to really emphasize this, is if you're an organization that only employs EU citizens, you really, really must get on now with thinking about a sponsor license, because we think there'll be a huge spike in applications, and they do take at least 4 to 6 weeks, but that time is going to be longer. And also it's very administratively burdensome, and you need lots of documents. And as many companies are actually not working remotely, it could be that you have some of these documents, original documents, in the office. So I would urge everyone to kind of look for these now. The new system, the Tier 2 General, which we have now, will be replaced by this route called Skilled Worker Route. And if you're an employer bringing over people, this is almost certainly going to be your go-to route, the Skilled Worker Route. There is still going to be an intercompany transfer route, but I don't think many people will use it because the salary level set for the intercompany transferee route is high. It's 41,500, whereas for the skilled worker route, it's 25,600. So in our view, the only reason you'd use the intercompany transfer route is if you had somebody that didn't have a good master of the English language, because you do not need English language requirements for the ICT route. So that's probably the only reason that you'd ever use it. And it doesn't actually go to settlement, so that's also not very good. So the skilled worker route has points, and if you were very cynical, you'd say that the points have been kind of added on afterwards because they don't seem to add a lot to the whole way the system works. But you have to get 70 points, and 50 are mandatory. And to get those 50, you have to have first a job offer from an approved sponsor, that's 20. Then you have to have a job which is skilled at the right level, which now has been brought down to A level, so that's very positive. And then you get 10 points for English language, and you have to have those three things. So that gets you 50. And then if you have a salary of 25,600 and the job, the occupational classification that's the right salary for that job, then you've got your 70 points. You can get other points. So if it's on the shortage occupation list, and remember the Migration Advisory Committee is reporting back on that on September, which will be really interesting because this is very important. If it's a shortage occupation list, then that will give you 20. And there's various other ways you can get extra points. So there's no resident labour market test, really positive, and no cap, which is another very positive thing. So I think in summary, the key takeaways are, first of all, we'll have certainty now, so you can make your planning. Secondly, for big companies who already have a sponsor license, it should be slightly easier because there's no resident labour market test and the cap's suspended, and so it should make things quicker. But for the new sponsors, you really need to get on with the sponsor license. And the other thing to say is that if you employ low-paid EU workers at the moment, there is no facility in the new immigration landscape for low-paid workers. There is a pilot scheme for agricultural workers, which will report back at the end of the year, but really isn't anything. So it's important, again, that you get on and make sure everyone that's here is on the EU settlement scheme. And the final point I just want to say is that there is likely to be more compliance, and you should really make sure your whole system is really, really compliant. And this isn't just a UK message, but this is a real global message.
Okay, so thank you so much, Julia. That's really helpful. And a quick question for you, Julia. What are your views on the new UK points-based system and the lack of access for lower skilled paid workers in key industries, and the impact this will have on filling such roles in the UK? And that's from Mark O'Reilly.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I mean, I think that there is a need, and I mean, it will be interesting to see what the results of the pilot that's going to come back at the end of the year on the agricultural workers. But I do think that the government will have to have similar schemes for other sectors.
Okay, so thank you very much, Julia. What I'm now going to do is to bring on our two guests. And what we're going to talk about now is the subject of managing a mega program. So without any ado, we'll speak to you later, Julia, but thank you so much for your input as ever. And let's bring on our two guests. We've got Narendra and Lynne. So hi there to both of you. So tell me, I mean, you guys are running what you can only really describe as mega programs. What's it like? How big are the teams that deal with mobility in Cognizant and Unilever? Tell me about your teams.
Okay, let me go on this one, right? So from a Cognizant perspective, I think the way we are structured within global mobility is we have the immigration wing, which has been the start of the global mobility work in itself was just the immigration part. It's only the last 7 years we also have a non-immigration, which looks at the overall policy process and the operations of the various assignment models, which could be, and we broadly classified into one which involves payroll transfers, where we do actual movement of people into convert them into host country, host plus kind of model. The other one is a short-term assignments, which is typically our commuters, shorter term, etc. Right? And the way we we are a team of about 20 plus people, and we are split. We have presence in the US, we have major presence in Europe, and we also have our colleagues in India. So the 20 plus population, which focuses on the non-immigration aspect of things. Of course, the immigration, if you take the immigration side of things, that's a huge team because we are present in every continent in every country where we have people, and we have our own shared services to deal with, so which then effectively balances things.
Okay, and Unilever, how are you guys structured?
Well, we have regional teams across the globe. So we have a team in LATAM, we have a team in Europe, including in UK, a team in Dubai for Namit Rub. Asia is represented as well as Africa. So in all those regions, we have teams. I think in total we're about 50 people experience leads we have to manage the moves within their regions. But we also have a Center of Excellence team of a GM operations team in Durban, South Africa as well, to manage all the payroll, to manage package production, cost estimate production. Our technology team is down there. So they're a really great support to all of us globally. We're managing the moves in region, but that team down there in South Africa really supports us greatly.
Okay, and we actually did a bit of research on structure. Let me bring in Michelle. Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Hi there.
Okay, so you did some research, didn't you, into what makes what's the best GM structure for large programs?
I did, and the answers are pretty evenly split, and I guess it just depends on who was answering and.
Oh, don't give the answers away yet. Let's
I won't. I won't reveal yet, but it was definitely interesting to see how the respondents were. So the question was, what is the best way to structure a large program? And the choices that we gave were to A, mainly outsource to an RMC, B, mainly insource to a COE, C, maintain control within global mobility, or other. And so there were some write-in comments. So obviously, curious as to our panelists' perspective, and then of course our participants listening and watching out there. What is the best way? Do you feel a best way to structure a large program? And you can see along the scroll we have up the choices now.
Okay, and so from your point of view, Lynne and Narendra, you go for a regionalized approach, is that right? Or do you use centers of excellence? I mean, how would you describe it?
For us, I think we'd be a bit of a hybrid. We have a center of excellence that manages a lot of operational activities, but we are definitely regional. We definitely have our separate regions that have our totally separate complexities that need focus in the regions. And we have experts in each region to be able to manage all the complexities that come along with it.
Okay. And in fact, we've got I'll just stick with you for a moment because we've got a question that's come in for you before we go on to that, which is from Gushran. Question for Lynne: does Unilever still adopt the home-based balance sheet approach?
No, well, we do a home-based payroll for STAs and our commuters, but anybody going on a long-term assignment goes to a separate payroll, which is not the host payroll or the home payroll, but yet another payroll program called Euronet Payroll, which consists of a combination of 10 of our most popular locations or our highest destination locations. So it's no longer a home-based balance sheet approach as he calls it now.
Okay, and getting back to this question of the structure again, comment coming in from Tara Hagen, hybrid for sure. So where are you on that, Narendra, in terms of the structure? How would you describe your structure?
Okay, so I think we have the classification I said. I think we are at different maturity levels and different complexities in the models we operate. Where we deal with the full-fledged payroll transfer kind of an arrangement. Now, we talked about Cognizant being about 300,000 people, so which means we have COEs which own part of the process, the entire process of the assignment. So we work with the various COEs to determine what is the best policy that will drive the assignment model, but each one of them will do their bits and pieces. So what do I mean by that is, while we focus on the policy and setting up the assignment model in terms of risks and various components that would go into the assignment model, for example, the TMs are still focused on the assignees when they move into the host country. The payroll still gets involved in terms of running their payroll, and so on. So that's the large volume for us, and as a result, we have to involve the various COEs in the process. It's a combined effort in terms of leading to the assignment and the assignee experience, right? But when it comes to the short-term program, which is where it's a little newer, it's been evolved in the last 4 years, where we hold it very closely within our team. So we sort of decide on the policies, we sort of run the ops, we sort of set the processes, but we also have a geographical nuance to it. So what we do is the way we treat with the European travelers versus those in the North America versus in the Asia Pacific, slightly different. So each one, there are experts within our teams. We are embedded with, say, for example, tax experts, social security experts. We also have relocation expertise within the team, right? So we use the expertise to run the short-term models ourselves, and then which will also feed into the inputs to the other teams. So we control that a lot more tighter than the payroll transfer assignment models that we operate.
Okay, and more comments coming in is actually just from Tara again. Actually, agree with Lynne on needing local regional leadership and support, and also some overarching guidance to support those regions from headquarters. And we've got another question that's come in, and this is from, it just says a LinkedIn user here, but I can see from LinkedIn it's actually James Gammon. He's obviously, it's all about privacy settings, that people sometimes set their privacy settings. So if you're outside LinkedIn, you can't see who it is, but obviously it's on LinkedIn, so I can, but we broadcast through StreamYard. It's all very complicated. Anyway, it was James Gammon, who is with Vertex Pharmaceutical, and James' question is, are your functions reporting up to shared services and HR, or do they report into finance?
For us, we report into the HR organization, and we used to be reporting to the HR. We moved into the COO organization. Now we're back to the HR organization. So it's a very different transition that we have gone in.
Okay, and Lynne, where does your function report into ultimately?
We are part of HR, but we report into Reward, which reports into the higher function of Unilever Ops, UniOps, which used to be enterprise technology and support. So the support functions, because of course global mobility is not a core role within Unilever. We're not a product, we're not a brand. So we report into UniOps.
Okay, got it. And also, I know, Michelle, we also did some research into people using RMCs or to an extent. Maybe we could just talk about that bit of research. I think the question was, what's the best model to support a large program?
Yeah. So, right, we had the two questions around best structure for the large program, and then the global mobility structure for large program. So two different approaches, kind of what we were just talking about on the centralized regional hybrid approach, and then talking about outsourcing to an RMC, insourcing it within a COE, or maintaining control. Do you want me to reveal the results of the first poll?
Yeah, let's look at this one in terms of outsourcing to an RMC. Okay.
Yep. So again, what I mentioned, usually we get one leading answer, but things were very split this week. 35% of folks thought it was best to structure a large program to mainly outsource to an RMC. Mainly insource to a COE was 26%. Maintain control was at 29%, 9%, I believe, and we had 11% or 10% said other. And within that other, it was really, people were kind of about striking a balance, working as one team, the RMC being an extension of the internal global mobility team, which is definitely something I would agree with. And then another one was having a preference to really outsource as much of the transitional work as possible, leaving the internal teams to really kind of focus on strategy and the HR business partnering. So, yep.
You carry on, Michelle.
No, I was going to say there were some good comments. And again, I think it really depends on the respondents, the size of the programs. So just, yeah, some good input from our pollsters.
Okay, and thank you for everybody that takes part in the poll. And so, question really to you, Lynne, and to you, Narendra, in terms of what you do. I mean, how much do you outsource to an RMC, and how much do you is the whole vendor management piece outsourced, or do you keep quite a lot in-house?
I would say that we have a pretty parental, caring, conservative program where we maintain the control within global mobility. Yet we have partners, and shout out to all our partners out there. Thank you so much for supporting us, because we really rely on them. We really do partner with them very heavily to do the RMC for the DSP, the local DSP, also for immigration and tax. We also partner with them very strongly. So we work very closely with our partners in our to maintain the program and to expedite the program.
Okay, and with you, Narendra, I mean, how much do you keep in-house and how much do you outsource?
Most of the things is sort of in-house. I think where our RMC, I mean, we have an RMC in place, global RMC in place, who sort of does the moves for us. They've done a fantastic job so far, because we have tied up with them for all the regions. And they have their own tie-up with the various vendors. So in a way, I think at least the policy and the other things we hold on to ourselves. But from an expertise perspective, from a process perspective, I think the RMCs have been able to execute the actual move to the host countries when they go on assignment. So that's a very critical part for us.
Okay, I mean, I know it's always a very difficult thing, to work out exactly how much you keep control of in-house and you manage the vendors directly and the whole supply chain directly. On the other hand, that can be quite an admin nightmare dealing with it all. And we had a debate on the show the other week about being strategic. And I think one of the things that sort of came out of it was that if you want mobility to be strategic, perhaps you need to either outsource or push down to a COE, some of the admin stuff, so you can actually focus in on the strategic stuff. And one of the strategic things I think that is important is this whole question of employee experience and employee engagement, to make sure that the move is a smooth, painful, to use Bill Gregg used the word about bringing joy when he was on the show a while ago. I mean, that might be a bit of a reach, but certainly not having any moans or whines is probably, not a bad goal to aim for at a minimum, even if we can't necessarily bring joy every day of the week. But what do you do about enhancing employee experience and engagement with the assignees when they move? Do you have programs that deal with that, or how do you try to engage with the assignees?
We have a program that we set up last year to increase our employee experience, and that was to partnership with our vendors. So we called it the Smile to bring joy, Smile training. And we partnered with our vendors, and we actually, in each region, we sat down with them, all the front-facing vendors, our immigration vendors, our tax vendors, our RMCs, and also our local DSPs, to bring them in-house and to sit with us in the office, back when we could, to sit with us in the office to meet each other face-to-face and to learn more about what each other does. What exactly do you do? What questions do you ask? What are you responsible for them to learn more about each other, because we're all working as one team to service our employees. And the more we know about each other, and the better we can work together, the happier we can make our assignees. assignees be. So simple things came out of that very simply, like, we don't want to have everybody asking the employee for a copy passport. Just one person asks for a copy passport and shares with everybody. So simple things came out of that. But we also shared we had sessions, we had about 5 sessions, and we shared our IT systems. So we went through our immigration provider, Deloitte, and our tax provider, and our RMC, showing the systems that we use, how we log information in our systems to see what each other can see and know about our assignees. We also did a session on our values, on Unilever's values, on our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, because every single employee that works for Unilever is committed to the sustainability targets. And so we wanted our vendors to also understand what drives our employees and what they're actually doing and why they're doing what they're doing. So we did an entire session on our USLP, and we did a session also on purposeful brands. So we believe at Unilever that brands with purpose will grow. And so we wanted to share with our vendors as well about our brands and why they're purposeful and why these people are driven to do what they do. So working with our vendors very closely and coming to the office, sitting down. Normally our immigration vendor or our tax vendor doesn't ever sit down with the local DSP. And that was a really great moment for them to sit together. And when they also see their names coming through on emails, to see each other's names. Oh yeah, I remember. Oh, I sat next to you. We shared a chocolate bar together or whatever. Oh, we ate some Ben and Jerry's together. And so bringing them closer together.
Those were the days, yes.
Yeah, those were the days when we were able to share Ben and Jerry's together. Or maybe we had a Lipton tea together. And so to bring everybody closer to create this one team environment. And I think it made a great impact for now what we're dealing with the pandemic, because we know each other well. They're not just names. They are people, and we're all the front-facing people working as one team to service our employees so that we can have a better employee experience, and we can have softer handovers instead of saying, "Oh, not my job. That's immigration's job," or "Oh, that's not my job. Hand it over to tax. I have no idea." No, we know who we know. Our DSP knows exactly the names of our employees. And knows exactly the names of of our immigration provider or tax provider, and can give guidance, maybe not guidance what the tax provider would give, but do a soft and warm handover, which makes a big difference for our employees. And now, like I said, with the pandemic, I think reacting quickly and swiftly to what was going on to get together. We have calls together, also weekly calls, where we bring everybody, all of our vendors, and our global mobility teams on the call together to talk about every single assignee and what's going on, so we're all on the same page. And when the pandemic hit and we found out that somebody was in this location instead of that location, immediately everybody was then informed on what the risks were for whatever situation it could be. So I think that having this one team and this SMILE training really made a big difference for us in changing the employee experience.
Okay, I mean that's fascinating. I mean, it's just some comments that have come up, which I think sort of move on from there. Jacqueline Van Haften, multinationals don't only outsource to RMCs. For some services, they use specialists. I mean, that's an interesting point. That it's how you manage that supply chain, because some services can be provided either direct to the corporate or via an RMC, and on the one hand, I suppose if you contract with them directly, you've got a stronger, better relationship. On the other hand, how many suppliers can one company contract with for every service? I mean, I don't know. And indeed, actually, to follow up on that question, and it's a question from Mark O'Reilly. He says for Lynne, but actually I'm going to address it to both of you. He says, do you use your RMC's entire global supply chain, or can regions and countries utilize other providers outside the RMC's network? I think the interesting question there is, even on things like, we got to RMCs, we could equally talk tax and immigration. So actually, can we choose best in class locally, or do we go global? Narendra, why don't you give us your views on this first?
Sure. So while we have the RMCs, one of the things that both of us work through is the fact that if if we find a good vendor in a particular region, I think they help us to connect with them, and then they bring them on board and start providing service. So we don't, though we interact with the local vendors, but it's the RMCs who maintain the entire the conversations and the track of how they're performing, etc. So they act as the bridge, and they don't mind bringing in new guys, especially if they are good, or change providers if we are facing issues. In fact, for any new country that we want to, we go to them and say, hey, we give them a spec in terms of saying, hey, this is what our requirement is. What are the kind of vendors that you suggest? And then they go through the market, they go through the networks, and then they come back and say, these are very good networks, and we sort of finalize on who's a good vendor that we can deal with. So that really is the sort of partnership that we're looking at.
Okay, and Lynne, where are you on this? I mean, do you use the entire global supply chain of your vendors, or do you pick and choose on a regional basis?
We generally use the entire supply chain of our vendors, and we rely on them to do the checks and balances needed to make sure that the third-party vendors that they choose are the right ones. However, there are some regions and some situations where we may have a third-party vendor that we suggest to use because there's a long-standing relationship already, or for whatever reason in that region. But we don't really treat our we don't see our DSPs or our third-party vendors as third-party vendors. They're our partners as well, and who just, regardless of who chooses them or where they come from, they're part of our one team. They're part of Unilever's global mobility team in all aspects. So, but I know that our RMC does a really good job at vetting all the vendors that they use. And they understand clearly what our needs are and the things that we want to pay attention to. So I think it's having that really good relationship with your RMC, an open relationship and a trusting relationship. It can make a big difference on the third-party vendors that they choose. That you're not just blindly choosing. You're making a very specific, conscious choice and decision on who you're working with.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of love here in the comments for your smile approach, and just pulling up some comments from Gabriella. I love the idea of a softer handoff between all the various partners. This yields strength in the supply chain and absolutely a better employee experience. And another one from Clivia. She says, having all the vendors meet is key and makes a big difference in the relationships and the services that are provided to the assignee. And so, so those are some of the, but I mean, we're talking vendors, and I suppose really, what vendors all want to know is how they win your business. So why don't we just talk a little bit about managing vendors and what you sort of expect from a vendor, and how you just generally how you work with your vendors. So, do you meet with them quarterly or monthly or 6 months? I appreciate meeting is a bit less common these days, but even by Zoom. I mean, how do you manage your vendors?
We're in constant communication with our vendors. We're meeting with them globally, quarterly. We're meeting with them regionally. We're meeting with them locally. We're WhatsApping with them. We're calling them. We're just in constant contact with them. They're just really an extension of us. So it's depending on the region, depending on the volumes, depending on the need and the demand, depends on how often those meetings are happening. Speaking for Europe in particular, we have meetings once a month with our country leads, and the vendors as well. So, but that's just like a governance and compliance call. But in the meantime, when we're dealing with moves and we've got complexities, we could be talking to them daily or multiple times a day. It could be weekly. It's really varies depending on the complexity of the situation. But they're never ever far away, and they're never ever a situation where they can't be reached. We're just always in contact with each other.
And the same goes with us, and the same goes with us as well. I think it really depends on the region, the criticality of the region, and how often you want to meet the vendors. Because at the end of the day, like Lynne said, it's partnership. So as long as they understand what we are doing, and as long as we understand what they're doing, right? I think the key is to keep that constant communication, build that trust. And once it goes on, then it's all about linking regularly to see how they're doing. Because even in these times, and especially in the COVID times, we do some conversation to see how they're doing and what is said that's working. And we have to keep the chain going in terms of saying, hey, this is how we are seeing our assignee movement. This is what we see as an issue, and they really appreciate it. And that's more important in terms of building a trust and the relationship with the vendors.
Okay, and we had a question sent in to us via LinkedIn from Henry. Sorry, but I don't know whether it's Henry or Henri, because I noticed that you're in Bordeaux. I'll go for Henri, but I don't know. Anyway, I know you're online. I saw you in the comments box. So I hope I haven't sort of crassly said the wrong pronunciation of your name. Anyway, the question that Henri asked is, for the sake of efficiency, what are the main qualities or prerequisites you look for when evaluating your global mobility service providers? So I suppose, yeah, how do you evaluate your global mobility service providers, and what are the main qualities that you're looking for in them? Do you want to kick off on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good question, because your vendors are so much an extension of yourself that it's really important that you choose the right vendor to work with. And going through an RFP is a massive piece of work. So it's really, I think, important to understand what's needed. I think that the first thing that Unilever wants to look for in our vendors is to find out if the vendor shares the same values that we do, and what their status is, or what their ideas are also about sustainability. But beyond that, I think that we look at the scope of services, the presence that they have, and their capability. Where are they located? Where do they have local presence globally? Are they in the markets that we're in the local markets that we're in? Or if they're not, do they have a strong network there? Are they fit for purpose? Do they have the programs needed that are important to our program? And also we look at their customer service and the communication levels and the way that they communicate. How is their org chart set up? How do they communicate mostly with their assignees, or with the assignees, or with us? What do their IT platforms look like? What is their escalation process? How do they escalate something? We'd also look at possibly a case study of a very complex situation that they had to resolve. And I think something for employee experience is really looking at how many touch points they have. How many touch points will our assignees come in contact with? Because we know how many touch points there are on our end, and that was something that was also really quite revealing when we did the SMILE training of how many touch points an assignee goes through. So that's also something. But I think finally, in the end, I think that we want to know that if they have the one team mentality, if they're ready to be a team together and be able to adapt and adjust, and have resilience. As we grow, will they grow, and will they challenge us to be better, and will they accept our challenge to them to grow and be better as well?
The one thing you didn't mention there, Lynne, was cost.
Cost. Well, we have a procurement department for the cost. Yes, for sure. Cost is extremely important. But luckily, when going through an RFP, that we leave the cost to the procurement team to go through. We're quite a large organization.
So you work out which vendor you want, and then you negotiate price when you've decided who it is that you want, to put it bluntly.
Quite basically, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Narendra, what about you at Cognizant? What are you looking for when you're evaluating a service partner?
One is it's going to be stability, right? I think stability in terms of financial stability, in terms of data security, etc. I think that's one of the very key things we look at. And of course, the cultural fit, and how do they fit closely with with our organization when it comes to trust, when it comes to collaboration, what is kind of the customer focus that they have. I think that's another key thing for us, because they're going to be like a long-term partner for us. And how are they as an expert in their field, or in terms of their reputation, etc. So that's another thing which we look at. And I think how do they think outside the box? And sometimes in terms of solutions, how are they practical? It's not like to the book, but where they think of some solutions creative when new situations arise. I think these are the key things that we look at when we look at choosing a partner for us. I think be it any vendor or even an RMC for that matter.
Okay, here's an interesting question. Have you ever had a vendor you didn't have to manage, who just did it independently?
Hi, Jacqueline.
I think the answer might be Jacqueline.
Hi, Jacqueline. Yeah, Jacqueline worked together with us on some group moves, and indeed, we had Jacqueline's team working independently, where we didn't really manage them so closely. They were part of the team for sure, but they have they hold an expertise that we don't hold, and so I think that it was more a little bit of hands off, only because of their expertise that they hold.
Okay, and we've done a bit of research, so let me just bring Michelle back into the conversation. Hey there, Michelle.
Hi there.
I think we did a little bit of research on. Let me just pull this one up. How can corporates best partner with their vendors? Do you want to talk us through that one?
Sure, I did. And I was just listening backstage, just such an interesting conversation. And I agree, kind of my old philosophy was that my success was my service partner's success and vice versa. And really that it needed to be a partnership. But we asked the question, how can corporates best partner with their vendors? And the choices were always communicate openly, create a win-win situations, agree on realistic expectations, and build mutual respect. I probably would, I'm going to venture to say you guys would agree that it's kind of all of the above. But if there is, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but if you had to pick one of them.
Right, exactly. If you have to pick one, which of the four would you choose?
So your choices are open communications, creating win-win scenarios, i.e. they make money, you make money, agree realistic expectations, or build mutual respect and trust.
For me, I think I would go for build mutual respect and trust. I think the rest of the things will follow, right? I think it starts with the smaller things which you can do as a vendor and as a company as in the relationship. I think it builds on over top of it. Nobody is superior in the relationship. Nobody is inferior in the relationship. I think that sort of common footing should come in when you call them as a partner for starters, right? And that will lead, and all this can be brought in only if you do the other things, which is you communicate openly with your vendor, you sort of create win-win expectations, you agree realistic expectations about what you want from the overall relationship, etc. I think for me, I would choose the last one, please.
Okay, and do you want? Why don't we try and bring out the results then? So
Drum roll. So yeah, drum roll. So the majority of the respondents would agree building mutual respect. 47% of the respondents thought that was the one most important thing. Agree on realistic expectations at 22%. Create win-win situations at 14%, and always communicate openly at 18%.
Okay.
So thank you who participated on this, and always.
And I mean, it's interesting, the comments. I've got a few comments coming up saying, actually, all of them are coming up. I can see Gusharan said open communications. Yuki, who's at The Gap and has previously been a guest on the show, said open communication. Gabrielle said mutual respect and trust leads to all. Molly Feldman, agree realistic expectations. Henri, mutual respect and trust, that's the foundation. Alison, realistic expectations. Tara Hagen, open communication feels like it will bring in all the others. Marilee Bratt, mutual respect and trust are important, which also leads to great communications. I mean, interesting comments coming through. I mean, there's an interesting comment from Millen. Said the danger is to get into a fixed-term contract for longer than 2 years. The exit clause may be a problem. So that's in other words, I think they were coming from the fact that whatever arrangement you have, you don't want to make it too long-term because you get stuck in. But I don't know. That's a hard one, because I think we also like certainty in our lives. We've got another question that came in from the audience, which is slightly off on a tangent, but I'll take it. It's from Darren, and Darren Short, and he's specifically not talking about assignees. And the question is, for the sake of efficiency, what are the main? How much emphasis and investment do Unilever and Cognizant place on global mindset development and training for employees who do not move globally? And I think that's fascinating, because we've done quite a lot of stuff recently about virtual assignments, and about how it's our role might be moving from global mobility to workforce deployment, and to have workforce deployment, and maybe in the days when post-COVID there's less movement than there might have been. How do we create a global mindset in employees who aren't actually moving globally?
I think that our company, everybody has pretty much a global mindset. If you're working for one of the categories, if you're working for one of the pillars, if you're working for foods and refreshments, you're part of the foods and refreshments team globally. If you're working for beauty and personal care, you're part of the beauty and personal care team globally. So, and English is our language of communication. We've got all kinds of nationalities in all different locations. I think that out of all the local employees in the Netherlands, I think out of like, we have an enormous amount of non-Dutch people working for for the Netherlands, and that goes for all over the place. But as far as learning goes, I think we're really strong on learning, and we really encourage our employees to learn every day in their personal life, but also in their professional life. And we have a really great platform set up. It's called Degreed, and it's similar to like a LinkedIn feed. And what you do is you choose the skills that you want to learn, and then your feed will be filled with all those from learning options for all those skills. And it could be that it's something to read, a Harvard Business Review article, or it could be a YouTube video, or it could be a recording from a learning from within the company or it could be an internal podcast or something that somebody's been made. And what we've done is that not only can you do this, can you go on Degreed and enhance your skills of what you personally want to learn about, but we also have role plans set up for all the different functions, and that you can go in, and if you want to become an expert in your role at whatever level you are, you can follow a role plan and follow learning, key skills and enabling skills, and also the tools and platforms that are used for that role. So you can go in and you can learn in your own role what you want to learn in your own role to become an expert, but you can also go into other role plans and learn in other role plans. If I want to learn about, marketing to the local deli neighborhoods, I can go into that plan and then find out information about what they're doing there locally to make it work. So I think that there's always an opportunity for a global mindset, and always an opportunity to learn at Unilever. It's really encouraged. In fact, we should be learning 1 hour a week at the minimum.
That's fascinating. I mean, I love that idea of sort of the global learning platforms that you've got in there. It's Cognizant. I mean, you're a technology company. Presumably, you're pretty global. From the very beginning, you've been pretty global in terms of service delivery. How do you sort of go about fostering that?
So I think one way of doing it is in terms of, so we started from a lot of the trainees who come into the company, right? I think we start fostering some sort of global mindset right from the training phase that they are in. That's one part where we start off. The second is also in terms of the various learning platforms that we have in place within Cognizant. I mean, specifically, if you want to look at how do you work with the various clients, how is it interlinked overall, and also in terms of most of them are in projects. So technically, you move from one client to the other client who could be in a different domain, who could be in a different geography altogether. So it sort of fosters in a way. At the end of the day, when you grow in the organization, you get exposed to the various facets, and you build in those global mindset as you progress in the organization. So it's sort of inherently built in because of the way the structure is. So that sort of helps, and especially when it drops in with the people who have had that experience, who are assignees, who carry on that experience, and they go back and when they interact with their own teams. I think that's another way of learning from your peers in terms of what you have experienced and how you translate it into a different experience for those who haven't traveled.
Okay, I'm afraid we are pretty much out of time. It's been a fabulous hour. What I do want to do is just remind everybody, as I said, if anybody wants to see a demo of the Benevo platform, we're launching one in 15 minutes time, and just go onto the Benevo website. And then tomorrow we've got the launch of the partner platform on Benevo Bytes. So it's the same time as it was today, but tomorrow. And then next week we're back with what I think is going to be a fun show of Talking Dirty. And it'll be interesting what comes out of the woodwork or comes out from under the carpet there in terms of scams and sharp practices and dodgy dealings and all sorts of things that I expect we will know about and don't want to necessarily talk about too much, but we're going to try and get them out there. Anyway, the main thing, it's been absolute delight having you, Lynn, and you, Narendra, on the show. You've been great sports. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. We're getting a lot of love coming in from the audience, from people saying how much they enjoyed it. It's been absolutely fabulous. And thank you to Michelle for your research. And of course, thank you to Julia for the immigration updates. And we'll see you guys both next week. So thank you, everybody. And this has been me, Brian Friedman from Benevo. I've been your host, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a blast.